Hey y'all, happy Sunday and welcome to this week's live Q&A session. This is the portion of the show where we allow YouTube to send out notifications that we're going live. If you're watching this live Q&A on replay, please scrub ahead until this graphic disappears and the actual show begins. If you're watching live and you have any comments or questions, please go ahead and put them in the live chat. But for now, grab a beverage, sit back, and relax while the countdown timer does its thing. Then we'll get started. Hey, happy Sunday, everybody. Welcome aboard on this long Labor Day weekend here in the U.S. I'm not expecting a huge turnout. Holy cow, there's 43 watching. Wow. That surprises me. It's a long weekend. I know a lot of folks are out camping, they're fishing, they're doing, oh boy, anything and everything. So, but I didn't figure we'd have a big crowd. So thank you for coming along. Thank you for joining us. And I know you have a lot better things to do with your time. So thank you very much. Let's get started. Today's video was on leveling, tramming, and leveling, squaring, and tramming. And I didn't get too technical with the leveling and squaring, um, simply because I was following Avid CNC's instructions, and they are specific to Avid CNC. And with that in mind, I went ahead and made reference to their page, their web page, and linked it down in the description, both on that video and I believe on this video, uh, because again, they are specific to Avid, and I followed them basically to the letter, but kind of branched off on my own a little bit too. The Avid CNC uses a dual drive system, and in Mach 4, which I don't have turned on, I should have fired it up. Uh, in Mach 4, when you home the machine, it automatically squares up both sides of the gantry using the little sensor flags out here on this red bracket right there in relation to your limit switches. So to square up the travel of the gantry, all I had to do was make sure that those sensor flags were out to the same measurement. There's one on this side as well. And when they're the same distance out, that squares it all up. Well, I then also drilled 4 1/4-inch holes using their CRV file for Vectric Software. And then you measure from corner to corner, both directions on a diagonal, and you should come up with the same measurement. And luckily I did. You drill 4 holes and then use 1/4-inch indexing dowels. Well, my 1/4-inch indexing dowels got here today. So I had to go ahead and get just use the shank from 1/4-inch end mills. And now that I have my indexing dowels, I will go ahead and recheck that with these. I just got them like, 15 minutes before we pushed the button, so I haven't even tried. What they are is it's just simply a steel dowel that is precision ground and to be 1/4 of an inch. I have some 1/2-inch indexing dowels that I've had for a long time, but I didn't want to modify their file and get back into re-engineering everything, so I just went ahead and used the shanks. If you were particularly eagle-eyed, you'll also notice that I used this 1/2-inch indexing dowel to set my X and Y 0 using the 3-way touch plate. The way the macro in Avid's version of Mach 4 is set up, you have to turn the bit to make sure that the cutting flute is to the proper, facing the edge it's getting ready to reference off of, so it gets a good 0. It gets a good reading on the diameter of the bit. Well, using an indexing dowel, I don't have to turn it. If I'm going to be using a V-bit or something like that, I can just put this in the 1/2-inch collet and set my XY 0 with this, and then swap out to my V-bit and go. So then I'll have to set the Z0, obviously. But they're handy to have. like I said, I've got the 1/2 inch, I've got the 1/4 inch. I had some 3/8 inch. I cannot find them. Uh, Later on down the road, when I make my spoil board, the 1/4 inch I'm going to be using for indexing on that spoil board. I bought them. Now they're a 10 pack. I'll put a link. Find my pencil. There we go. Uh, uh, I'll put a link to these 1/4 inch indexing dowels down in the description of this video as soon as I'm done live here. They're about 1.5 inches long. They're not expensive. It's a 10 pack of them. But this way I can drill a series of holes along my X and Y over on this corner of the spoil board when I get it laid down. Then I can reference from that every time, from that same location every time. So, but I can still remove them if I have something that I don't need to, I don't need them. So if I have something that's going to cover up that area or what have you. So let's go ahead and get into your questions. Okay, Mark Rolls says, I thought you needed to first surface the MDF board before placing your flat reference block onto it. If the MDF is at an angle, then so would be the top of your block. That's why I went around and measured the 4 corners and leveled that block. That way, it didn't matter how straight, square, or level the frame is. If that block is level in space, the same distance away from the spindle on all 4 corners, it's flat. So, and that's when this came in handy. So the by moving this dial indicator around to all 4 corners, I was assured that it was nice and level, and shimming it up. And I cheat really. It's instead of going down and buying shim stock, I go ahead and just use uh, old feeler gauges. I mean, you can find feeler gauges in yard sales and car boot sales and things of that nature, or just out and about. In my tool collection over the years, I probably have 6 or 8 different feeler gauges. When I needed one, couldn't find it, and ran down to the car parts store and bought another one. So just take the blades out and use those for shims, and then put it all back together. So everything works great. And it's a cheat, but it works. So for instance, when I adjusted the knot out of the spindle, I needed 11 thousandths of an inch. And it's like, well, let me look. What is 11 thousandths of an inch in metric? 11 thousandths of an inch is just slightly more than 1/4 of a millimeter. So how do you find a shim that small? It's like, well, okay. So just by using those, it works, and it works very, very well. Okay, let's see here. Russell Faraday says, I had work to do on tramming to get the Z rails running vertical before tramming the spindle. Is the Avid simply spot on, or were there checks to do? The Z axis is all on linear rails that is mounted in the Z axis assembly, and they are built, they are flush right on that Z axis plate that holds the entire uh, the linear rails there, bolted flush up against it. And then you take that entire Z axis and bolt that onto, well, you bolt the mount, half of the mount onto it, then the other half to the the little plate that mounts on the x-axis, bolt those together, and that's what I was adjusting when I was adjusting the tilt, is those 4 bolts there. So it's all, and the z-axis comes pre-assembled. So I don't really know what all goes into building that. I do know it's on a ball screw, but I just left it alone. So that was all pre-adjusted by the factory. It came as an assembled unit. So let's see here now. Make sure that answered your okay, let's see here. Does Ben Carlson make or sell ER25 mounts? I have no idea. Head over to his Thingiverse page and reach out to him. Get a hold of him. He may, but I don't know. So let's see. Jeff Tarr, who asked a question last week, says his Stepcraft Q204 is now working fine. Had a tech at Stepcraft in Connecticut. Okay. Broken electronics board replaced and now back in action. Okay. Well, you're very welcome, Jeff. I didn't do anything. So, but glad to hear you're back up and running. So let's see here what we're going with. I'll Leg wants to know, looking for a quick, cheap way to add a pen to use with the ER16. Any recommendations? I did see the video by Peter Pasuelo and considering it. If you go to Dave Gatton's YouTube channel, he has one of his live streams, and I'm trying to remember the name of the gentleman he had on with him. He made a pen holder, believe it or not, using a piece of drawer slide, so that the pen mounts in the drawer slide and gravity holds the pen down on the paper or whatever it is you're drawing on and moves around. That way the pen will follow any bumps or ridges or what have you. But he came up with a wooden block that he just mounted to the front of his router mount on his CNC, and then screwed that little piece of drawer slide. I can tell you that a Sharpie pen like this, one of these Sharpie pens, if you wrap a piece of masking tape around it, it'll fit into your x-axis or fit into a 1/2 inch collet. And then I use it to run across my x-axis to find the rearmost limit of my spoil board. But more on that in the next video. My next video, I'll actually be laying down the spoil board and getting that done. But if you just need to draw 1 or 2 quick lines, couple wraps of masking tape, it'll slip right into a 1/2 inch collet. You can tighten it up, bring it down, and then zip, draw a quick line or 2. There are specialty pen holders for CNC, but I have no experience with them, so I'd be hesitant to recommend any one brand or style over another. But if you were looking to draw something complex like blueprints or something like that, I would look into a dedicated pen holder. And they make them. They're out there, and they're not expensive, So, let's see here. Mark Kimball wants to know, where did you get the spring clamp for the spindle end of your dust control hose? Amazon. They are very handy because, you just pick it up, put it right back down, and it clamps. I got it off of Amazon. I will find a link to it. A lot of this stuff, I have links. I just was planning on putting a link to that in the dust collection video when that comes out. But give me about 10 minutes after we're finished here live, and I'll put a link to it in the description of this video. Okay? So, let's see here. Mario Montoya says, does setting Z0 to the machine bed when having multiple sheets of different thicknesses mean there is no need to reset Z0 when running each of the different sheet tool paths? Yes. Now, if you are going to mount all of your material at once and then go around and cut this sheet here and then move over and cut this sheet here, then move over and cut this sheet here, you could probably get away with that. But if you're running different tool paths and running different G code, it doesn't take but a second to reset Z0. So yeah, I've never done it, but it certainly could work that way. I haven't done it. You know, as a matter of fact, Mario, that's a good thing. Let me add that to the list of things to experiment with and try. I can throw down a piece of, I could throw down a piece of 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and 3/4 inch and just check them out and see how that works. So it, in theory, yes, it would work. In practice, never done it, so I can't say yes. So let's see here now. Yes, Dave Blackburn says there's a pen holder on Thingiverse you can 3D print. There are several. There are several different pen holders out there. And it depends on what you're wanting to hold. If you want a Sharpie pen, or if you want a fine line marker, or just a standard, ink pen, pencil, mechanical pencil, whatever. That's something that I am wanting to kind of look into, because I'm one of those guys that likes a good technical drawing. There's a friend of mine back in Massachusetts who runs a business called the Country Bed Shop. And his whole livelihood, his business, is restoring antique beds and making museum quality reproductions of antique beds. And this guy is an absolute artist when it comes to his craft. And one of the things that has basically cemented that call in my mind is when he does a technical drawing of, say, a chair that he's going to make, or a Queen Anne bed, he will get in and he will make a gorgeous blueprint and an absolutely fantastic technical drawing of the project that he's going to build. And I've told him several times to frame those drawings and put them up for sale, because, I mean, these things are beautiful. So creating a pen holder that will do that quality of work is something that I'm interested in looking at, because, I mean, you can go online and you can find all kinds of neat old drawings from old patents and what have you that are in the public domain. I mean, things that were patented like in the 1700s. You can find all these illustrations, and it's just cool as heck to me. So that is something that I'm. Yep, it shut off on me. All right. So that is something I'm going to explore, which is what I was trying to say. Let's see here. Lots of people throwing out different sources for these spring clamps for the dust collector hose. There are several sources out there. So, see, you need to put up a curtain so people can see all your goodies behind you. Just tell them to get it on Amazon. Yeah, well, what can you say? And Busy Bee Tools in Canada carry them too. Yes, I keep forgetting we have an international audience. When I say Amazon, I mean Amazon.com, which is the US. I have no idea if it's the same thing for Amazon.co.uk or Amazon.ca. I really don't know. Let's see. Percy Cooka says, is there any method to cut or groove PET acoustic panels on your CNC? I have never done it. I'm not sure. That's something that I would have to look into. I would imagine there would be, but I also aren't most of those molded. I'm not certain. Yeah, I'd have to do a little bit of research on that. I really do not know. I've not used that material, so it's an unknown to me. Brooks Martin says, yeah, like Da Vinci sketches. Exactly. I mean, imagine a 3-foot tall Petruvian man up on your wall. That's cool to me. I know I'm weird that way. That's great. Some people like sunflowers. Give me Petruvian man or something. Okay, Jeff over at J&J Love Dance says, okay, would you explain the Mason lines, how they work and why you need them? It's okay. The Mason lines running corner to corner. If they don't touch in the middle, what I have to look at is where they cross. If they're not touching, that means one corner in the rear is higher than the other. I want to bring those two lines down to where they just touch. You'll also notice I was walking around and pushing down on one. That was to see when I pushed down on one, I was looking at the one on top of it to see if when I push down the bottom one, if the top one moved down too, that means one in the front is too high because it's trying to lift up. So if this line on the bottom is being pushed down by this line on the top, that means this corner is lower than this corner. Okay, so it's just a quick way of looking to see and then using that level to confirm. And that's just a thing with me. If I look too much at a level, it my eyes are this way. It starts to kind of blur and it looks good. Then I walk away from it for 10 or 15 minutes and comes back and then I see, nope, one side is slightly higher. So using that little Mason's line is just a quick way of saying if the strings aren't touching, I know one corner is higher than the other. If they are touching, I push down the one on the bottom to see if that top one moves. If it doesn't move, that means I'm good. If it does that, then that means this string, this corner towards the front is lower than this corner towards the front. Does that make sense? So it's just a real quick, easy way of seeing, are the four corners at about the same height? And then finishing up with the level. So I think you just like exercise walking around your machine. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's sure. Why not? I mean, squeezing in between the vacuum and the back wall is always fun, and stepping over cords at the same time. And now that I think about it, well, it's not there anymore. There was a dust collection flex I was laying there for a while too. So, hey, what can you say? Okay. Jim to LMO. Okay. Have you ever used a drag knife to cut leather? No, I have not. I looked into getting a drag knife and decided that I probably wouldn't use it. Um, I don't do leather work. I don't think I'm going to get into leather work at this stage of my life. I don't need to take up a new hobby, a totally new hobby. I think this is more than enough because this is just an augmentation to the woodwork I already do. But I know it is done. Uh, I just have not done it. As I said, I looked into getting a drag knife and just decided I wouldn't use it enough. And I thought about it for vinyl because I can see where that would be a major benefit. But after talking with a few people who have used both, a not trying to disparage any brand, but people who have used a Donek drag knife or a Cricut machine, they say the Cricut's better. It does a lot better. It's a lot easier. And unless you have something super, super huge you need to cut, the Cricut is just the better way to go. And so I just decided, well, I don't need a drag knife, so I never got it. It's one of those things where, yeah, I could spend the money on it, but it would just sit there in the drawer and collect dust, and I've already got enough doing that. So the short answer to the long question is no, I've never done it. But I have seen it done in videos. So, okay, I think I've caught up with all of those. Let's see. Brooks Martin says an old carpenter's trick we used to straighten a wall was to run a string line from the end to offset with a chunk of 2x4, and down the wall we'd measure with a chunk of 2x4 and adjust as needed. Yes. Yes. I mean, there are as many ways of bringing things into square or level as there are people trying to bring things into square and level. I mean, it's just nuts. Ronald Cool, thank you. It was Builds with Brian. That's who Dave Gatton's guest was. I appreciate that. With the pen holder. For some reason, I had Wesley Treat in my mind, and I knew that wasn't it. So for the pen holder, if you go to Dave Gatton's YouTube channel, and you'll have to scroll back because it's been a while back. You'll have to scroll back on his videos list and look for his live stream with Brian from Builds with Brian. And he showed how to make that pen holder. It was a slick little operation. I've just not done it myself. So, see, I'm going to go ahead and reference a question. Let me pull it up here to make sure that I'm not putting words in this person's mouth. So I'm bringing it up to find the question. I had someone ask in the comments. Let's see here. Yes. They asked why I didn't use the tramming indicators for leveling the frame. And simply put, the easiest way for the easiest way to explain this would be if you think about you have a boat and you have a ladder on that boat, and it's tied up at the dock, and at low tide one rung is in the water. At high tide, there's still one rung in the water because the boat moves with the tide. The water gets deeper, but the boat goes with it. Trying to use those tramming gauges would be the same thing. I could bring the tramming gauges forward onto that crossbar, but the gantry is mounted on to the rails. So if I start adjusting 1 foot, it's going to move up with the gantry. It's not going to give me it's going to be the same measurement because the indicator is going to go up with that corner. So, I mean, good idea, but what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to level it and referencing off the floor, not so much off the gantry, because the gantry is going to raise with the machine. So, let's see here. Okay, Tom Miller wants to know, do you have any suggestions for cutting rings out of OSB sheets? The rings would be for stacked rings similar to those used for segmented vases. Just use a regular end mill, speed similar to plywood. I have not cut OSB on a CNC. I'm going to do something I never do, and that is suggest you try it. And that's because I don't know what the outcome is going to be. Uh, Try some conservative feed rates and RPMs, and I would just try with a regular end mill. But I would make it an end mill that you can afford to lose, because OSB, I'm not sure about the adhesives used in making OSB. So I don't know how hard that would be on the edge. I would imagine it would dull it up pretty quick. So make sure that it's a bit that you can afford to wreck if it does come to that. But I've not cut OSB. I should go ahead and cut some OSB just to see. In fact, I already had planned on doing that next year after I get this all settled and get a few projects under my belt, because I'm still learning the machine and learning Mach 4. And that is I wanted to cut some odd materials, some new and different stuff, and just see, A, can you cut it? B, how does it work out? Does it cut well, or is this something that you should avoid? And OSB needs to go on that list. I hadn't considered it, but you should be able to use just a standard end mill, the same as you would for plywood. And I would basically treat it as plywood. My only reservation is the fact that there is so much more adhesive in it, and I don't know what type of adhesive they use. Is it the same as plywood? I really don't know, because as much as we don't think so, plywood is actually pretty hard on tools. All you need to do is take a piece of plywood and run it over a jointer, and then take a look at those jointer knives after you've done that. They will get dented and nicked a little bit by that adhesive. You'll find lines in your jointer knives. So yeah, just that's the only thing that I would be concerned with. Of course, then again, jointer knives are not carbide unless you go out and get the carbide insert type. So let's see here. We have anything else? Okay, it's a side conversation out there. I wondered what was going on. Okay, Sargon and Les are discussing this super cool dial indicator mount, and just know anybody who does the use this dial indicator mount, you may have to modify it slightly, like mine. the mounting lug on this dial indicator was pretty wide, so I actually just ran it through the table saw slightly to open that up, and it worked like a champ though. So Peter Van Vliet wants to know, do I use shellac much? Yes, I do. I like shellac very much. It is now it has its place. If you've ever seen white rings on a table or coffee table, you know that shellac does not like to get wet. And when somebody says use a coaster, that's usually why. Uh, it is a good finish. It's a great finish. Who am I kidding? But it has its place. And I usually, for tabletops, prefer something else. I'll go with some type of a varnish rather than a shellac. Shellac is not a very good outdoor finish at all, simply because it doesn't weather at all. It basically almost no UV resistance, and it's certainly not waterproof. But if it's an indoor project, I would say probably 2/3 of the projects that I have made for indoor use, hanging on a wall or something like that, I finished with shellac. Having said that, a shellac-based sanding sealer is a good universal sealer, and it will seal one type of finish from another type of finish. So if you have an old finish, you're not sure what it is, a clear shellac over that, then you can go over it with something like a lacquer or a polyurethane if you want to. But it will seal one finish from another, so you don't end up with any trouble. So, unless, of course, one of them is an Imron paint, and there isn't much that sticks to Imron. Basically, you're stuck just sanding it off. So, Imron is wicked stuff, but it's not very common. So, let's see. John says Builds with Brian has stuff on YouTube. Yes, you know what? I'm going to look him up and see if he has anything on that pen mount. And if he does, I'll put a link to it in the description of this video as soon as we're done. Writing a note to myself. Builds with Brian, pen holder. All right, there we go. Thank you, John, for mentioning that. But he went in depth on that pen holder and pretty deeply, pretty detailed on Dave Gatton's live stream. But I don't remember which episode that was, but it's been a couple of years, so you have to go pretty far back to find it. But you know what? If you're not subscribed to Dave anyway, you should be, because it's things like that. I mean, he's got a whole slew of videos on there, and some good stuff. A lot of good guests. So, okay, let's see. We've been on for about 44 minutes. Does anybody have any questions at all for me? Something that I didn't get to? I'm scrolling up to see if I forgot something. Let's see here. Let's see here. I'm not sure. Next week, not next week, the week after, the video will be on finally, getting the spoil board laid down. I'll give you a preview of coming attractions here. I got my T-track. I have my MDF. Now I'm just getting the time. Somebody asked me, I believe last week, does the T-track set up for 1/4-inch hex bolts or 5/16? These are set up for 1/4 inch. It's just aluminum extrusion, again, from Amazon. And at least now it's beeping when it goes quiet and shuts off, so I can tell immediately. Again, I needed 4-foot sections. I got them from Amazon, and I was going to go for the gray anodized. Saw they had the red. It was the same price, so I went for the red. And there will be links in that video. I'm just finalizing the measurements and the layout of where I'm going to put the T-track. I'm going to mount the T-track onto the board as I go. But one of the things I'm going to do, spoiler alert, is I'm going to put the T-track right over the top of the mounting bolts for this MDO board. That way, should I need to remove this table for some silly reason, I can pull the T-track off and then get to those button head cap screws that secure the MDO board onto the table. So I'll have a piece of T-track over all 5 of those mounting locations, and then I'm going to fill in between. So, spoiler, that's where I'm going with this. So, let's see. Okay, Sargon says, which would be better to seal for small, narrow lines for a spray color fill, clear coat or sanding sealer? Personally, I would use a clear coat. Sanding sealer, the problem with sanding sealer is it's very thin. It's supposed to be. It is supposed to, sanding sealer is supposed to be absorbed into the wood and block off the open capillary action, the open grain that you've created with that bit. So it's going to be very thin. In fact, most shellac-based sanding sealers are what's referred to as a spit coat, which is basically a normal 3-pound cut shellac, thinned down 3 parts denatured alcohol to 1 part shellac. That's normally what a shellac-based sanding sealer is. Now, every company has their own formulation. I like Zinsser Seal Coat sanding sealer, but it's going to be very thin, and that may not be good enough. You may end up with 3, 4, 5 coats of sanding sealer before you get the same sealing quality as a top coat. Now, you're lasering small text on clothing. Oh, on a clothing hanger. Okay, that's different. On a clothing hanger, yeah, I would, it depends on what kind of top coat you're going to put on it, but I would seal that. I'm assuming V carving. I would seal that V carving with the same top coat you plan on putting on. That way you don't have any conflict, and there won't be any color changes or odd tinting or anything like that. So that's just me. I would use the same finish that you're going to top coat with. So, but if anybody out there has had real good luck using a sanding sealer and what we're talking about is sealing the wood after a V-carve to prevent a paint or a dye or a stain from leaking through the the grain that you just exposed with that V carving and keep it from bleeding. So if you have used a sanding sealer, yeah, by all means, let us know. So, but personally, I use the same finish that I'm going to top coat with. Les says I cut my straight shellac 50% with denatured alcohol. Yeah, a lot of people do. And it depends on what you're doing with it. I do, like I said, for a sanding sealer, for a spit coat, Yeah, I thin it down 3 parts denatured alcohol to 1 part shellac, and that's how I'm going to seal my spoil board, is by doing just that. So, Peter Van Vliet says, "Do you use spray guns?" I use one siphon feed sprayer called a Critter, and you'll see that when I go to seal my spoil board. It's a siphon feed gun that uses a mason jar, believe it or not, a 1-pint mason jar. And it is the simplest, easiest sprayer you will ever handle in your life. Cleaning takes longer to tell you about cleaning than it does to clean. That's my problem with most spray equipment. Now, this is not going to compete with a turbine driven SATA HVLP spraying system or something like that. I wouldn't paint a car with it. But for what I do, this little critter does the job and does it flawlessly for me. I am looking into airbrushing. I have used an airbrush in the past, and I have one problem, and that is I suck with it. So my son-in-law is an artist, and I'm going to basically Velcro him down to a chair and get him to teach me how to use the airbrush. So, you know, look forward to that pretty soon. I do have a old Binks number 7 spray gun, and I do have the Harbor Freight purple HVLP guns. But I have found, and I also have my Wagner airless that I painted these walls with. But I have found that, to be honest, if you look at these walls, it took me 14 minutes to paint these walls with that airless sprayer. And it took me 45 minutes to clean that gun after I was done. It took me 11 minutes to spray the ceiling and 45 minutes to clean it after it was done. They are a major pain to clean up after. And that's why I like the Critters so much, because you literally take a mason jar with some of the solvent that is used to thin whatever product you're spraying. So in the case of shellac, put about that much denatured alcohol in the bottom of a 1-pint mason jar, spray it into the garbage can, and you're done. About 15 seconds worth of spraying and you're done. There is one orifice that you're cleaning, and that's it. It's that, it literally is that simple. And I'll put a link to it in the spoil board video. You'll see what I mean. Let's see here. JMJ Love Dance says you can also cut shellac with Everclear. Yeah, the alcohol in denatured alcohol is the exact same alcohol that you drink. It is denatured with a poison on purpose, and that is to keep people from drinking it. That way they don't pay the excise taxes. The distillery doesn't pay the excise taxes on that product that they would pay on liquor. But it is all 100%, well, it's not. Denatured alcohol is not 100% denatured, or excuse me, ethanol. It has some other agents in it to make it poisonous so that people won't drink it. So don't try it. It will kill you dead or in hell, and it will hurt the entire time you're dying. Don't do it. But it is the same alcohol. Let's see. And, to piggyback off of Bob Heltebridle, Everclear is more expensive than denatured alcohol. So why would you? I mean, So, let's see. Michael Keymont says laser through masking tape, paint, remove tape. Yes. Sargon says with masking tape, it still bleeds. Yes. And that's because the minute you burn or cut into wood, you're creating end grain. Anytime you cut a wood fiber, you have created end grain. And end grain's going to suck up that paint, dye, finish, stain, whatever, faster than the face or edge grain will. So that's why sealing it. Okay, let's see here. Mario Montoya says lacquer seems to work well, best with oil-based paint, clean up with mineral spirits. Yes, I do like working with lacquer a lot, but lacquer can be temperamental depending upon the humidity when you're spraying or brushing it. And I'm very, very bad at brushing lacquer. Very bad. If I use lacquer, I'm spraying it. But I like lacquer because it dries and cures so much faster than enamel does. Um, the only problem is what you can tint your own lacquers. Um, you can tint lacquer yourself, but enamel comes in so many more colors. And with acrylics getting more and more and more popular, lacquer and acrylic are not compatible. Acrylic can can lift lacquer, so it's not they're not compatible. Let's just put it that way. Let's see here. Uh, Robert Dymock wants to know, would an O-flute bit work better than an end mill for cutting Corian? Thank you, auto select or auto correct rather. Um, from what I gather now, I've never cut Corian. I know a couple of people out here in the chat they have cut Corian. From what I gather, a standard two flute spiral, whether it be upcut or downcut, I'm not sure, actually cuts Corian very well. Now, as compared to an O flute bit, I have no idea. But I don't think the O flute is necessary. Excuse me. And you folks who have experience with Corian, please let me know if I'm wrong there. Is an O flute bit better than a standard two flute end mill for cutting Corian? So Richard Farwell says, had a fellow student who went to Reno to pick up alcohol, wanted to be a purist when thinning his shellac, couldn't buy it in California. There's a woodwork. There's a word for that. There's a woodwork for that? Where did that come from? Wow. There's a word for that. It's called bootlegging. Oh, well. Okay, Nydia Mazalek, who is Michael's better half, says that the two flute is the best that she has used. There you go. I think between Nydia and Michael, they have probably cut more Corian than I've seen. So there you go. Bob held to bridle. Also, he echoed that two flute end mill. Okay. Oh, it's Michael using his wife's computer. Well, take out the trash. She'll probably get you a computer of your own. So. Okay, Jeff over at JMJ Love Dance says he's cut Corian, only used regular V-bits and end mills, cuts great. I have cut it on with a standard router. I've cut it on a table saw. I've edge sanded it and used a standard handheld router with standard carbide tipped bits, putting edge profiles on it and things of that nature, but I've never cut it with the CNC. I know it cuts beautifully with standard handheld router, I mean, and it really, really takes a good profile edge. But I just have never cut it on the CNC yet. Never say never. Let's see. Michael Keymont says, for what it's worth, I spray with a $600 HVLP gun. The $100 Harbor Freight guns are as good in a side-by-side. Okay, good to know. Good to know. Yeah, I just found that for what I do, the amount of time it takes to clean up the gun after I use it isn't worth the 2 minutes of spraying I'm going to do. When you are spraying okay, when you're spraying that, it's not worth a half hour of cleanup. But that little critter, and that's it, done. Speaking of which, that's that sample of that Armorite that used to have the logo down here, nice and smooth. I mean, that is velvety soft. I mean, you can see the trails that the bit left as it went back and forth in different directions, but there are no ridges. That is velvety smooth. I have never been that successful. I mean, I had my Gatton CNC dialed in real well with that Edge Technologies tramming gauge. But I'm here to tell you what, this just blew it out of the water. I mean, it almost feels, you know how when you have cleaned a tabletop and then you wax it, buff it, how you just touch it and it feels almost feels soft and cushiony? That's what this feels like. This is just, it's gorgeous. So no complaints whatsoever. So I have never turned the Corian, but I've seen it done, and yes, it looks real good. Okay. Peter Van Vliet says, are you going to get a laser head for the Avid? I'm going to look into it, but I don't know which direction to turn yet, so watch this space. That's all I can say to that. All righty, we have been well on for well over an hour. Okay, next week will be an open Q&A. Then the week after that will be finally the spoil board video, and I'll get it all done, and hopefully I can get that pirate cut before his ship sinks, you know, and get into doing that project and get it finished up. And there may be a special surprise in the live stream for that. I don't know yet. I'm working some stuff out. Channel members, we had 2 new channel members, Richard Poulin and James Witt. Head over to my main channel page as soon as we're done here. Click on the community tab and you will find the link to tomorrow's members only live stream. Other members should have got the email notification from YouTube. I set it up this morning. Forgive me. Should have been done yesterday. Members only live stream tomorrow at 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 Eastern. For everyone else, we'll see you next Sunday. Enjoy what's left of your Labor Day weekend. Thank you very much for all your comments, your questions, your answers, for watching the video, for sharing the video, for liking and leaving me a comment. And until next week, go do something cool. Go out and make some chips. You got a whole nother day to go. That finish is dry enough. Get out there and get to work on it. Go on, get out of here. Have a great day and thanks. Take care, y'all. Bye-bye.